My name is Faith, and I am 28 years old. Working as a graphic designer in Atlanta was my dream job, but the path here wasn't easy. 6 years ago, my parents kicked me out when I refused to give my college fund to my pregnant sister Jessica. Now, after years of silence, they've reached out asking for help. Looking at their email, I feel both vindicated and conflicted. Before I continue my story, let me know where you're watching from and hit that like and subscribe button. Family obligations versus self-respect is a balance we all struggle with, and today you'll see just how complicated that balance can be. I grew up in a middle-class suburb just outside Atlanta. Our family looked picture-perfect from the outside. My father Richard worked in insurance sales, and my mother Diane was an elementary school secretary. 4 years younger than me, my sister Jessica completed our family of four. We also had a small extended family. Aunt Laura and Uncle Stephen would visit during holidays with our cousins, and my grandmother Margaret lived about an hour away. From my earliest memories, I could sense the difference in how my parents treated Jessica and me. While they never said it outright, their actions made it clear who was the favorite child. My birthdays were simple affairs with minimal fuss. A homemade cake, maybe two small presents, and occasionally a friend allowed to come over. In contrast, Jessica's birthdays were elaborate celebrations with themed decorations, catered food, and generous gifts. When I turned 16, I received a card with $20. When Jessica turned 16, she got a used car. The favoritism extended beyond celebrations. In school, I maintained a consistent 4.0 GPA, joining honor societies and art clubs. My achievements were acknowledged with brief nods and comments like, "That's what we expect from you." Meanwhile, Jessica struggled to maintain C averages, but every past test was celebrated as if she had won a Nobel Prize. My parents would proudly announce her accomplishments to anyone who would listen, while my academic excellence was treated as routine. When I made mistakes, the punishment was swift and severe. A missed curfew by 15 minutes resulted in being grounded for 2 weeks. Jessica, however, could come home hours late with flimsy excuses and receive nothing more than a mild scolding. Once, when Jessica accidentally backed into our mailbox while learning to drive, my father laughed it off as a learning experience. When I spilled paint on the garage floor during an art project, I had to work additional chores for a month to pay for the damage. Throughout high school, I worked summer jobs at local shops and restaurants, saving every dollar toward my future education. Jessica received a regular allowance for minimal house chores, money she spent immediately on clothes and outings with friends. When I asked about an allowance, once my father told me I needed to learn the value of hard work. Despite the lack of encouragement from my parents, my passion for art and design grew stronger each year. I spent hours sketching, painting, and eventually learning digital design programs on the school computers, since we couldn't afford one at home. My art teachers recognized my talent, suggesting I pursue it professionally, an idea my parents dismissed as impractical. "Art is a hobby, not a career," my father would say whenever the subject came up. During my senior year, I applied to several art schools, including my dream school in Atlanta. When the acceptance letters arrived along with a partial scholarship to the prestigious Atlanta Institute of Design, my parents seemed more annoyed than proud. Still, they reluctantly agreed to help with the remaining tuition from what they had always referred to as the college fund they maintained for both Jessica and me. The only person who truly celebrated my achievements was my grandmother Margaret. While my parents focused on Jessica, Grandma Margaret focused on me. She saw my artistic talents and encouraged me to develop them. During summer visits to her house, she would take me to museums and galleries, nurturing my creative spirit in ways my parents never did. When it came time to apply for colleges, Grandmother Margaret secretly helped me research scholarships and prepare my portfolio. She would call regularly to check on my progress and send small care packages with art supplies and encouraging notes. While my parents were attending Jessica's middle school choir concerts, Grandma Margaret attended my high school art exhibitions, beaming with pride at my work. "You have a gift, Faith," she told me after seeing my senior showcase. "Never let anyone tell you otherwise." Despite the clear favoritism, I never gave up hope that my hard work and achievements would eventually earn my parents' approval. I believed that once I established myself as successful, they would finally see my worth. This hope kept me going through 4 years of college, working multiple jobs while maintaining excellent grades and building a portfolio that impressed my professors. I was determined to prove myself not just to my parents, but to myself as well. Each semester, as I learned new techniques and created more sophisticated work, I would send examples home, hoping for recognition that rarely came. Phone calls with my parents typically centered around Jessica's activities and needs with my college experiences, relegated to brief inquiries about grades and when I would graduate. Still, I persisted, believing that my dedication would eventually yield not just professional success, but also the familial validation I craved. Looking back, I realize how naive that hope truly was. No amount of achievement could change the fundamental dynamics of our family, something it would take a painful awakening for me to truly understand. The summer before my final year of college, I was 22 and filled with excitement about my future. I had just completed a successful internship at a small design agency where the creative director had hinted at a possible job offer after graduation. My portfolio was growing stronger, and my professors were connecting me with industry contacts. Despite the constant struggle to balance work and studies, things were finally coming together. When I returned home for summer break, I expected a peaceful few weeks to prepare for my final year. Instead, I walked into family chaos. Jessica, 18 and just graduated from high school, announced she was 3 months pregnant. Her boyfriend Tyler, a guy she had only been dating for 6 months, stood awkwardly beside her as she shared the news. My parents' initial shock and disappointment quickly transformed into excitement about becoming grandparents. Within days, the house was filled with baby catalogs, and my mother started collecting stuffed animals for her future grandchild. My father, after a stern talk with Tyler about responsibility, began making plans to help the young couple. During what was supposed to be a regular family dinner, I noticed my parents exchanging meaningful glances before my father cleared his throat. "Faith, we need to discuss some financial matters with you," he said, setting down his fork. I nodded, thinking perhaps they wanted to confirm the final tuition payment for my last year. "Things are getting a bit tight around here," he continued. "With the baby coming and all the expenses that will bring," my mother jumped in. "We are so proud of how well you've done in college. But with Jessica's situation now, priorities have to shift." I listened as they danced around whatever point they were trying to make, mentioning rising costs and family responsibilities. Meanwhile, my internship success and job prospects went completely unacknowledged during that conversation and all others that week. Whenever I tried to share exciting news about my design work, the topic quickly returned to Jessica's pregnancy and preparations for the baby. One evening, my father began questioning the practical value of an art degree compared to real responsibilities, like providing for a child. My mother nodded in agreement, suggesting that perhaps creative careers were more suited for people without family obligations. "Jessica is facing real adult challenges now," my mother said. "Sometimes I wonder if your art school is really preparing you for the real world." A week into my stay, Jessica tearfully announced that Tyler had broken up with her, declaring he wasn't ready for fatherhood. He had blocked her number and told mutual friends he wanted nothing to do with the baby. My parents rallied around Jessica, comforting her and assuring her they would support her through everything. Later that night, I overheard my parents in the kitchen discussing finances in hushed but tense voices. My ears perked up when I heard the phrase, "the college fund." "We have no choice," my father was saying. "Faith is almost done anyway, and Jessica needs this now more than ever." The next morning, I confronted them, asking directly about my tuition for the final year. The awkward silence that followed confirmed my worst fears before they even spoke. "Honey," my mother finally said, "we've had to make some difficult decisions. With Jessica having a baby and Tyler not in the picture, she needs security." My father was more blunt. "We used your remaining college fund as a down payment on a small house for Jessica and the baby. She needs a stable home, and we can't have her raising a child in her bedroom here." I stood frozen, unable to process what I was hearing. "But what about my final year? You promised that money was for my education." "You're already almost done," my mother replied dismissively. "Surely you can find scholarships or something." Jessica needs this more right now. She has a baby coming, Faith. And what about the promises you made to me? I asked, my voice breaking. I worked 3 jobs while maintaining a full course load based on your assurance that you had money set aside for my education. My father's face hardened. Sometimes being an adult means accepting that life isn't fair. Your sister is in crisis and needs our help. I would think you'd want to support her too. I retreated to my old bedroom and broke down in tears, the full weight of the betrayal crushing me. They had taken the money explicitly promised for my education and given it to Jessica without even consulting me. Years of favoritism had culminated in this ultimate demonstration that my future mattered less than Jessica's immediate needs. With shaking hands, I called my grandmother, who listened in shocked silence as I explained the situation. "This is unacceptable," she said firmly. "They made a commitment to your education. Have they even considered alternatives for Jessica?" When I emerged from my room hours later, red-eyed and exhausted, Jessica was sitting in the living room scrolling through her phone. When I asked if she knew what our parents had done with my college fund, she barely looked up. "Dad told me. It's not like it's a big deal. You can just take out loans or whatever. You're always talking about how smart you are and how great you're doing in school. Figure it out." "That money was promised to me for my education," I said, struggling to keep my voice calm. "I made all my plans based on that promise." Jessica rolled her eyes. "Well, I'm sorry my baby and I are such an inconvenience to your precious plans. Some things are more important than your art school, you know. This is a real life we're talking about." The next week dissolved into increasing tension. My parents began suggesting that perhaps I should take a break from school to help Jessica prepare for the baby. They floated the idea that I could work full-time and help with childcare once the baby arrived, finishing my degree someday when things settled down. "Family helps family," my mother insisted when I objected. "Jessica would do the same for you." But I knew that wasn't true. Jessica had never sacrificed anything for me, and now she expected me to put my entire future on hold for her. The final argument came when I refused to consider dropping out to help with the baby. "You've always been selfish," Jessica accused, tears streaming down her face. "You only care about yourself and your stupid drawings." My parents stood firmly beside her, their disapproving gazes making their position clear. I had become the villain in their narrative, the selfish daughter unwilling to help her sister in need. 1 week before the fall semester was set to begin, my parents called me into the living room for a family meeting. Jessica sat beside them on the couch, one hand resting protectively over her slightly rounded belly. I took the chair opposite them, already tense from the formal atmosphere. My father spoke first, his tone businesslike. "Faith, we've given this situation a lot of thought, and it's time for some firm decisions to be made." My mother nodded in agreement. "We need everyone in this family to pitch in during this challenging time." What followed was not a discussion, but an ultimatum delivered in clear, unequivocal terms. I had 3 options, they explained. Option 1, drop out of college immediately and give the refunded portion of my partial scholarship to Jessica for baby expenses. Option 2, work full-time while helping Jessica with childcare, instead of returning to school with the understanding that my education would be indefinitely postponed. Option 3, move out immediately and never ask them for anything again. "This family needs to prioritize right now," my father concluded. "And a new baby takes precedence over an art degree. That's just reality." I stared at them, waiting for some sign that this was a terrible joke. "You can't be serious. I'm 1 year away from graduating. Everything I've worked for is right there within reach." "Then you should be able to figure out how to reach it on your own," my father replied coldly. "You're always talking about how independent and capable you are. Prove it." I turned to my mother, hoping to find some sympathy, but her expression remained impassive. "Mom, please, this isn't fair. You promised to help me finish school." "Life isn't fair, Faith," she answered. "Sometimes we have to adjust our expectations based on changing circumstances. Jessica needs us now." Jessica sat silently through this exchange, occasionally glancing up from her phone with a satisfied expression that made my blood boil. I have never asked for anything extraordinary, I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. Just for you to keep the promise you made about my education. Jessica's pregnancy was her choice. Why am I being punished for it? This triggered an explosion from my sister. You think I wanted this to happen? You think this is easy for me? Tyler abandoned me, and now my own sister is acting like my baby is some kind of inconvenience. My father stood up, pointing at me. That's enough. I won't have you adding to your sister's stress. Stress isn't good for the baby. You have 3 days to make your decision. The next morning, I went to the financial aid office at school, desperately seeking emergency assistance. The sympathetic counselor explained that while there were some emergency funds available, they wouldn't come close to covering my remaining tuition balance. Late in the application cycle, most scholarships had already been awarded. I called friends explaining my situation and asking if anyone had a couch I could crash on temporarily. Several offered short-term housing, but none could help financially with tuition. I was running out of options. My grandmother called daily, offering emotional support and suggestions, but she lived on a fixed income in a small one-bedroom apartment. She offered to send what she could, but her limited resources wouldn't make a significant difference in my tuition needs. The night before my deadline, I made one final attempt to reason with my parents. I had prepared a detailed plan, including additional loans, I could take extra work hours I could manage, and a strict budget that would allow me to finish school without their financial support. All I asked for was the opportunity to continue my education without having to help with Jessica's baby. I'm sorry, Faith, but we've made our decision, my father said, after barely glancing at my carefully prepared documents. Jessica needs us as a family to support her. If you can't be part of that solution, you need to go your own way. Jessica sat on the stairs listening to the conversation. Why are you making this so difficult? Just accept that my baby comes first now. The following afternoon, I returned from a meeting with my academic advisor to find my belongings packed in boxes and bags stacked by the front door. My mother was labeling the boxes with marker, not looking up when I entered. Your father will be home in an hour, she said flatly. He expects you to be gone by then. With shaking hands, I began carrying boxes to my old car, a used Honda with over 150,000 miles that I had purchased with my own savings. As I worked, Jessica watched from the window, occasionally taking photos of me with her phone, as if documenting the moment for later satisfaction. When my father arrived, he silently helped carry the remaining boxes, his face a mask of stern determination. No words were exchanged until everything was loaded into my car and trunk items precariously tied to the roof with bungee cords. Where will you go? My mother finally asked, a flicker of concern crossing her face for the first time. Why would that matter to you now? I replied, the words bitter in my mouth. My father handed me an envelope. Your birth certificate and social security card. We're keeping your health insurance active until you find something else. That's more than my father did for me when I moved out. As if that gesture somehow balanced the scales of what they were doing. As if throwing me out without warning after taking my education fund was justified by maintaining my insurance for a few more months. I got into my car without another word, tears blurring my vision as I backed out of the driveway. Through the windshield, I watched my father immediately turn to the front door, pulling out his keys. The last image I had of my childhood home was my father changing the locks while my mother stood watching, arms crossed. That night, I parked in a far corner of the campus parking lot, reclining my seat as much as possible to try to sleep. The reality of my situation sank in with crushing weight. I was homeless with barely enough money for a few weeks of food, let alone tuition or housing. Around midnight, my phone lit up with a text from Jessica. Mom's been crying all evening because of how you stressed her out. Thanks for causing all this drama just because you can't accept that my baby needs to come first now. Some sister you are. I turned off my phone and let the tears come freely, sobs shaking my body in the darkness of my car. But as the initial shock and pain began to subside, something else took its place. A steely determination formed within me, hardening my resolve. I will finish school, I whispered to myself in the darkness. I will succeed with or without them, and someday they'll realize exactly what they threw away. The first month after being kicked out was a blur of constant motion and stress. I moved between friends' couches, never staying more than a few days at any location to avoid being a burden. My car became my closet and storage unit filled with boxes of belongings I had no place to keep. To maintain my final year of classes, I took on 3 jobs, morning shifts at a campus coffee shop starting at 5 a.m., weekend retail work at a clothing store, and evening hours in the university computer lab. Between classes and work, I averaged 4 to 5 hours of sleep per night, often studying in brief windows between responsibilities or during slow periods at the computer lab. With no money for textbooks, I relied on library copies photographing pages I needed to reference when the books weren't available. I sold my laptop and tablet to cover initial expenses using school computers exclusively for my design work. My small collection of jewelry, including pieces received for birthdays and graduations, went to a pawn shop to pay for required software access for my design courses. One particularly difficult evening, I was struggling to stay awake while working on a project in the design lab when Professor Winters, my advanced typography instructor, noticed my exhaustion. "Faith, you've been wearing the same clothes for days and you look like you haven't slept in a week," she said bluntly. "What's going on?" After some gentle persistence, I finally shared my situation. Instead of the pity I feared, she responded with practical action. The next day, she connected me with an emergency scholarship fund for students in crisis, providing enough to cover part of my outstanding tuition balance. She also introduced me to 3 other design students, looking for a 4th roommate to share expenses in an apartment near campus. Amanda Taylor and Jordan welcomed me into their small 2-bedroom apartment. I slept on a futon in the living room, storing my remaining belongings in plastic bins tucked against the wall. The arrangement wasn't ideal, but compared to my car or temporary couch surfing, it felt like luxury to have a consistent place to sleep and shower. As my living situation stabilized, I poured myself into my coursework with renewed determination. My designs began receiving recognition within the department, with one corporate identity project selected for display in the school gallery. Each small success strengthened my resolve to prove I could succeed without my family's support. My academic advisor, Dr. Reynolds, took notice of my work ethic and talent. She helped secure me an additional internship with a local marketing agency that offered both course credit and modest compensation. Though the extra hours further compressed my already limited sleep schedule, the professional experience was invaluable. Throughout these challenging months, my grandmother remained my one connection to family. Despite her limited means, she would send small care packages with homemade cookies, handwritten notes of encouragement, and occasionally a $20 bill she insisted she could spare. These gestures of love sustained me emotionally when everything else felt overwhelming. The day I walked across the stage at graduation, summa cum laude, honors cord draped around my neck, none of my immediate family was present. My roommates cheered loudly from the audience, along with Professor Winters and several other faculty members who had supported me. My grandmother, unable to travel due to her health, called immediately after the ceremony, her voice filled with pride. "I always knew you would make it, Faith," she said. "You have a strength in you that no one can take away." With my degree finally in hand, I faced the next challenge, finding employment in a highly competitive field. I submitted applications to countless design firms and marketing agencies, both locally and in neighboring states. For every 20 applications, I might receive one response, usually a form letter rejection, or at best a request for additional portfolio samples that rarely led to interviews. To stay afloat financially, I cobbled together freelance gigs from Craigslist and word-of-mouth referrals. I designed menus for local restaurants, created simple websites for small businesses, and produced marketing materials for community events. The pay was minimal and inconsistent, but it kept me eating and contributed toward rent. The constant hustle took its toll on my health. I developed persistent headaches from eye strain and stress. My weight dropped from skipped meals and constant movement. Sleep remained a luxury I rarely enjoyed in sufficient quantity as late-night design work bled into early morning client meetings. 3 months after graduation, when my financial situation was becoming truly dire, lightning struck. The creative director from my internship spotted some of my work in a local business magazine that had featured up-and-coming designers. She remembered my dedication and skill, reaching out with an unexpected email. We have an entry-level position opening up next month. Based on the growth I've seen in your work, I think you would be a good fit. Would you be interested in interviewing? The starting salary was modest by industry standards but represented wealth beyond imagination compared to my current pieced-together existence. The interview process involved 3 rounds of portfolio reviews and design challenges, each more intense than the last. I prepared obsessively, refining my portfolio and practicing responses to potential questions. When the offer came, I accepted immediately. My first paycheck allowed me to purchase a used laptop, ending my dependence on public computers. The second went toward a security deposit on a tiny studio apartment, barely 400 square feet, but entirely my own space. For the first time in over a year, I had a door I could close, a bed that wasn't a futon or couch, and the quiet solitude I had craved during months of constant displacement. Working at the digital marketing firm introduced me to a world of professional stability I had nearly forgotten could exist. Regular hours, consistent pay, health insurance, and colleagues who respected my contributions created a foundation upon which I could begin rebuilding my life. My designs for client campaigns received positive feedback, and my supervisor noted my exceptional attention to detail. Within my first year, I received a promotion to junior designer with a corresponding salary increase that allowed me to start building a modest savings account. I continued taking occasional freelance work on the side, now being selective about projects that either paid well or added valuable pieces to my portfolio. As my professional life stabilized, I finally had the mental space to address the emotional trauma of my family's rejection. Through the company's health insurance, I began seeing a therapist who specialized in family estrangement and abandonment issues. Our weekly sessions helped me process the pain and betrayal while developing healthy boundaries and coping mechanisms. Throughout this entire period of struggle and gradual recovery, I received no contact from my parents or Jessica. My only connection to family remained my grandmother, whose phone calls and occasional letters provided the emotional support I desperately needed. While the absence of my immediate family created a painful void, I slowly began building meaningful connections with colleagues and friends who valued me for who I was, not what I could sacrifice for them. 3 years after being kicked out, I had transformed my life in ways that still sometimes surprised me. At 25, I had advanced to a senior designer position at the firm, managing my own small team and leading projects for major clients. My portfolio had grown impressively, showcasing versatile skills across digital and print media that attracted industry attention. My growing professional reputation led to speaking opportunities at local design events and guest lectures at my alma mater. Former professors who had supported me through my crisis now introduced me as a success story to current students, an irony not lost on me, given how close I had come to not finishing my degree at all. Beyond my career, I had developed a circle of close friends who had become my chosen family. Weekly dinner gatherings at rotating apartments, holiday celebrations that created new traditions, and the genuine support exchanged during both triumphs and challenges gave me the sense of belonging my biological family had never truly provided. A brief romantic relationship with Daniel, another designer I met at an industry conference, ended amicably after 6 months when we realized our career goals were taking us in different directions. Unlike the abandonment I had experienced from my family, this parting was respectful and mature with both of us, acknowledging that sometimes caring for someone means recognizing when paths need to diverge. The experience helped heal some of my trust issues and fear of rejection. In the spring of that year, I received notification that one of my campaign designs had won a regional advertising award. The recognition came with a feature in a respected industry publication and a small cash prize that I used to upgrade my home office equipment. Standing on the stage accepting the award, I spotted Professor Winters in the audience, beaming with pride at her former student's achievement. With my improved financial situation, I was able to move from my tiny studio to a 1-bedroom apartment in a safer neighborhood with more natural light for my home workspace. Having a separate bedroom and living area felt like immense luxury after years of compressed living. I painted the walls, bought real furniture instead of secondhand pieces, and for the first time created a space that truly felt like home. As my day job provided stability, I began developing my own small freelance business on the side, focusing on branding for small creative businesses and startups. These clients, often operating on limited budgets, but with interesting concepts, allowed me to experiment with styles and approaches that pushed my creative boundaries beyond the more conservative work required by my agency's corporate clients. With financial security came the emotional space to more deeply address my family trauma. I began seeing a therapist specializing in family estrangement, Dr. Levine, who helped me understand the patterns of favoritism and emotional manipulation that had defined my childhood. Our weekly sessions provided tools for processing my feelings without letting them define my future. What happened to you was profoundly unfair, Dr. Levine told me during one particularly emotional session. But the remarkable thing is how you've refused to let that injustice determine your path forward. Throughout these years of transformation and growth, the one constant connection to my past was my grandmother. Though her health had begun declining, making travel impossible, our phone calls remained the highlight of my week. She delighted in hearing about my professional accomplishments and new friendships, offering wisdom and encouragement when challenges arose. When she called one Tuesday evening, her voice weaker than usual, I knew something had changed. "The doctors say it's progressing faster than they expected," she said, her typically strong voice fragile. "I think it's time you came to visit, dear. There are things I want to tell you while I still can." I took emergency leave from work and drove the 3 hours to the hospice facility where she had recently been moved. Seeing her frail form in the hospital bed was a shock, but her eyes still held the same warmth and clarity they always had. Over the next 3 days, we talked more openly than ever before. She revealed that she had always seen the favoritism in our family, but felt powerless to change it. "Your mother repeated patterns from her own childhood," grandmother explained. "She was the overlooked child while her sister was favored. Instead of breaking that cycle, she recreated it with you and Jessica." Before I left on the 3rd day, she insisted that the nurse help her retrieve something from her personal belongings. With trembling hands, she presented me with a small jewelry box. "This has been passed down through 4 generations of women in our family," she said, opening the box to reveal an antique sapphire pendant on a delicate silver chain. "I always intended it for you, not because you're the oldest, but because you have the strength of character this heirloom deserves." 2 weeks later, I received the call that she had passed peacefully in her sleep. The small private funeral was held at the cemetery near her home. I arrived early to have some time alone before others arrived, but as I approached the gravesite, I saw them. My parents stood stiffly by the funeral director, Jessica, beside them, with a visible baby bump suggesting she was pregnant again. Our interaction was brief and cold. Formal condolences exchanged with the awkwardness of estranged family, forced together by death. Jessica mentioned nothing about her obviously advancing pregnancy, and I asked nothing about her first child. My father gave me a church-style side hug, my mother a quick dry peck on the cheek. We maintained the fiction of family for the funeral director, and the few other attendants then parted without meaningful words. Driving home alone after the service, I allowed myself to fully feel the grief of losing the one family member who had truly loved me unconditionally. Yet alongside that pain was a profound gratitude for having had her in my life, especially during the darkest periods. I used the small inheritance she left me to establish an emergency fund, creating the financial security I had lacked when my parents abandoned me. The sapphire pendant became my most treasured possession, worn during important presentations and events as a tangible connection to her belief in me. The empty space in my life that family should have occupied gradually filled with meaningful alternatives. I adopted an older rescue dog, a gentle golden retriever mix named Sunny, whose companionship eased the loneliness of returning to an empty apartment. My circle of friends expanded to include neighbors, industry colleagues, and members of a local artists collective I had joined. With each passing month, I established new traditions to replace those lost with my family. Thanksgiving became a potluck gathering with other family orphans among my friends. Christmas evolved into a day of volunteer work at a local shelter, followed by movie marathons with close friends. These new rituals lacked the historical weight of family traditions, but carried more genuine warmth and acceptance than I had experienced in my parents' home. As my confidence grew, so did my professional assertiveness. For the first time, I declined a project that undervalued my work, a small website for a client who balked at my standard rates and demanded extensive revisions without additional compensation. Setting this boundary, walking away from work I would have desperately accepted 2 years earlier, marked a significant milestone in both my career and personal development. Your talent creates value. Sarah, my mentor and now close friend, reminded me, never let anyone convince you to give that away for less than it's worth. It was advice that applied to far more than just my design work. At 28, I had built a life that would have seemed impossible in those dark days of sleeping in my car and wondering how I would survive. My design studio, Faith Forward Designs, had grown from a side hustle to my full-time business with a small but dedicated client base and a growing reputation for innovative branding solutions. My apartment, while not luxurious, was comfortable and stylish, reflecting both my aesthetic sensibilities and the financial stability I had fought so hard to achieve. My days had a rhythm to them, a blend of client meetings, creative work, professional networking, and personal time. I had friendships that had deepened over years, colleagues who respected my work, and even a casual dating life that I approached with cautious optimism. The acute pain of family rejection had dulled to a background ache that occasionally flared but no longer defined my daily existence. Which is why the email that appeared in my inbox on an otherwise ordinary Tuesday landed like a bomb in my carefully constructed piece. From R. Davis, insurance@gmail.com. Subject: reaching out, Faith. It's been a long time. I hope this email finds you well. Your mother and I have been thinking about you and wondering how your life has turned out. We occasionally see your name mentioned in design publications. Things have been challenging here. Jessica now has 4 children with 3 different fathers. The youngest just turned 1. Her second husband left 6 months ago and she's moved back in with us along with all the kids. The financial strain has been significant. We've had to refinance the house several times to help Jessica and the grandchildren. Your mother has had some health issues that have limited her ability to work. I know our relationship has been strained, but family is family. Perhaps it's time to put the past behind us and reconnect. We would like to meet with you if you're willing. Dad. I stared at the screen, reading and rereading the message as emotions crashed through me in successive waves. Shock at the unexpected contact after 6 years of complete silence. Anger at the casual tone that acknowledged no wrongdoing. Curiosity about Jessica's obviously complicated life. And beneath it all, a small, persistent voice from my childhood that still yearned for parental approval and connection. With trembling hands, I stepped away from my computer without replying. I needed space to process this unexpected intrusion from my past before I could formulate any response. I took Sunny for a long walk, the physical movement helping to calm my racing thoughts. That evening, I forwarded the email to Dr. Levine requesting an emergency therapy session to help navigate this unexpected situation. She made time for me the following morning. What do you want from this potential reconnection? She asked after we had discussed my initial emotional reaction. Not what you think you should want or what might be expected, but what would actually serve your well-being. It was a profound question that required several days of reflection. In that time, I researched Jessica's situation through social media, discovering pictures of 4 young children ranging from toddler to around 7 years old. Her posts alternated between complaining about her exhausting life as a single mother and sharing inspirational quotes about how blood is thicker than water and family is everything. More concerning were posts suggesting that I had abandoned the family, portraying herself as the responsible daughter who stayed to help our parents, while I ran off to pursue selfish dreams. This revisionist history had apparently become the narrative shared with extended family members, who occasionally commented with support for Jessica and disapproval of my supposed abandonment. After a week of careful consideration and another session with Dr. Levine, I replied to my father's email agreeing to meet at a neutral location, a coffee shop midway between our locations. Walking into the cafe, I spotted them immediately. 6 years had aged my parents significantly. My father's hair had gone completely gray, his posture slightly stooped. My mother looked thinner than I remembered, with deep lines etched around her mouth and eyes. They both stood awkwardly when they saw me, as if unsure whether to attempt a hug. I solved the dilemma by extending my hand for a formal handshake. "It's good to see you, Faith," my mother said, her voice carrying a forced cheerfulness. "You look wonderful." "Very professional," my father added, gesturing vaguely at my business casual attire. After ordering coffees, we sat at a corner table, an uncomfortable silence stretching between us, until my father cleared his throat. "So you've done well for yourself, it seems," he said. "Your own business and everything." "Yes," I replied, simply, not offering additional details about the years of struggle that had preceded my current stability. "We always knew you were smart," my mother added, as if my success had been their expectation all along, rather than something achieved despite their abandonment. The conversation continued in this vein for several minutes, with my parents making small talk as if we were distant acquaintances, catching up after a brief separation, rather than family members who had not spoken in 6 years due to their choice to disown me. Finally, my mother reached into her purse and pulled out a photo album. "Would you like to see pictures of your nieces and nephews? You haven't met them yet." I accepted the album, looking at photos of 4 children with Jessica's features clearly visible in their faces. The oldest, a boy around 7, had Jessica's eyes. Twin girls of about 4 had her smile. The youngest, a boy barely walking, resembled someone I didn't recognize, presumably his father. "They're beautiful children," I said honestly, feeling a pang of sadness for these innocent kids born into such instability. "Jessica is a wonderful mother," my father said firmly. "She's had some bad luck with the fathers, but she adores those kids." My mother leaned forward. "Which is actually part of why we wanted to talk to you." And there it was, the real reason for the contact after 6 years. Over the next half hour, the full story emerged in bits and pieces. Jessica had moved back home with all 4 children after her second husband left her. My parents had refinanced their house multiple times over the years to help Jessica with everything from medical bills to car payments to daily expenses for the growing number of grandchildren. Now they were facing foreclosure, unable to keep up with the increased mortgage payments on their reduced income. My mother had developed arthritis that limited her ability to work full-time, and my father's insurance business had suffered during recent economic downturns. "We've tried everything," my father explained, "but with 6 people in the house and Jessica unable to work with the little one still at home, we're running out of options." My mother reached across the table, attempting to take my hand. I subtly shifted away, maintaining the physical boundary. "We know you've done well with your business," she said. "We thought perhaps you might be in a position to help family in need." "What exactly are you asking for?" I questioned, already suspecting the answer. My father straightened in his chair. "Ideally, we were hoping you might purchase the house from the bank. We could continue living there, paying you what we can as rent. It would keep a roof over the children's heads and give us time to get back on our feet." I sat in stunned silence, the audacity of the request sinking in. After 6 years of no contact after taking my college fund and throwing me out, they expected me to buy them a house with no mention of their past actions. "How much is the outstanding mortgage?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. The figure my father quoted was substantial, far more than the house had been worth when I lived there. Years of cash-out refinancing had created a financial hole they couldn't escape. "And Jessica, what does she think of this plan?" "She knows we're meeting with you," my mother said carefully. "She's hopeful that bygones can be bygones, for the children's sake." The pressure tactics were familiar, the implication clear. If I refused, I would be hurting innocent children, further cementing my role as the selfish, uncaring family member. "I need time to consider this," I said finally. "I'll need to look at my finances and think about what makes sense." My father's expression tightened, clearly disappointed I hadn't immediately agreed. "We don't have much time before the foreclosure proceedings advance. The bank wants an answer within 2 weeks." "I understand. but this is a significant decision that requires proper consideration, I replied firmly. As we prepared to leave, my mother asked hesitantly, "Would you like to come by the house, see Jessica and the children?" "Not today," I answered. "Let me think about the financial situation first." The subtle change in their expressions confirmed my suspicion. This meeting had never been about reconciliation. It had always been about money. After they left, I remained at the table processing the interaction. Using my phone, I searched property records and foreclosure notices, confirming what they had told me about their financial situation. I also found Jessica's social media posts from just that morning, complaining about having to watch her kids alone because Mom and Dad had to go beg my selfish sister for money. That evening, I called Sarah, my mentor and closest friend, explaining the situation and seeking an outside perspective. "They're treating you like an ATM, not a daughter they haven't seen in 6 years," she observed bluntly. "The question is whether you feel any obligation to help, not for them, but perhaps for the children who are innocent in all this." It was a question I wrestled with over the following days. Through careful research, I discovered the house was significantly underwater on its mortgage, worth far less than the outstanding loan amount. Purchasing it would be a financial disaster, throwing good money after bad into a property that would never recoup the investment. More concerning were the patterns I observed in Jessica's social media history. Despite claiming financial hardship, she posted regularly about shopping trips, expensive toys for the children, and salon visits, suggesting that money flowing into the household wasn't being managed responsibly. After a week of deep reflection and consultation with both my therapist and a financial advisor friend, I made my decision. I requested a second meeting with my parents, this time bringing along my financial advisor friend Martin, who had agreed to help present options in a professional manner. We met at the same coffee shop, my parents' expressions falling when they saw I had brought someone with me. "Mom, Dad, this is Martin Reynolds, a financial advisor who's been helping me review the situation," I explained, keeping my tone businesslike. My father frowned. "This is a family matter, Faith. I don't think we need outsiders involved." "Actually, since this is primarily a financial decision, having expert input is important," I countered. "Martin has helped me develop some options I'd like to discuss." Over the next hour, I presented my carefully considered response to their request. No, I would not be purchasing their underwater house. The financial reality made that an unwise investment that would potentially harm my own stability, something I had worked too hard to achieve. However, I was willing to help in other ways that would benefit the children while ensuring responsible financial management. I proposed establishing education funds for each of my nieces and nephews that could not be accessed by either my parents or Jessica, except for verified educational expenses. I also offered to pay for financial counseling services for the entire family to help develop a sustainable budget and debt management plan. These solutions address the long-term needs rather than just putting a temporary Band-Aid on the immediate crisis, I explained. They also protect both the children's futures and my own financial health. My father's face grew increasingly red as I spoke. When I finished, he slammed his hand on the table. "So that's it. You'll throw some pennies at your nephews and nieces for college someday, but you won't help keep a roof over their heads now. After everything we did for you growing up." Martin shifted uncomfortably beside me, but I remained calm. "I'm offering substantial assistance structured in a way that ensures the money goes where it's intended. Given our history, I think that's more than fair." "What history?" my mother demanded. "You act like we abandoned you. You chose to leave rather than help your sister when she needed you." The revisionist narrative was breathtaking in its audacity. "That's not what happened, and you know it. You took money specifically promised for my education, gave it to Jessica, and then threw me out when I wouldn't drop out of college to help with her baby." "You always exaggerate," my father dismissed. "We simply asked you to be part of the family solution during a difficult time." "I was sleeping in my car," I said quietly. "I nearly lost everything." "And yet here you are, successful enough to help but choosing not to," my mother replied. It was clear they would never acknowledge the reality of what had happened. In their minds, they had done nothing wrong, and my success only proved they had made the right choice in prioritizing Jessica, who continued to struggle despite their constant support. "My offer stands," I said finally. "Education funds for the children and financial counseling for the family. It's a generous offer that protects everyone's interests." My father stood abruptly. "Keep your money. We'll figure this out ourselves like we always have." As they walked away, I felt a complex mixture of emotions: sadness for the relationship that would likely never heal, relief at maintaining my boundaries, concern for the innocent children caught in the middle of adult dysfunction. A week later, I received a surprising text message from Jessica. "The kids have been asking about their aunt. Dad says you're refusing to help us, but Mom thinks maybe you'd at least want to meet them. They're at the park near your office tomorrow at 3. After consulting with Dr. Levine, I decided to go. The children deserved a chance to know their aunt regardless of the complicated history with their mother and grandparents. The meeting was awkward at first, with Jessica maintaining a cold distance while introducing me to her children. 7-year-old Lucas, 4-year-old twins Emma and Ava, and 1-year-old Noah regarded me with curious eyes, clearly having been told little about their mother's sister. "You have the same eyes as Mommy?" Emma observed, looking up at me intently. "Yes, we're sisters," I replied with a smile. "That means we share some of the same features." Over the next hour, I pushed Lucas on the swing, helped the twins navigate the monkey bars, and even held little Noah briefly while Jessica took a phone call. By the end of our time together, the initial tension had eased slightly, the children's natural openness creating a bridge that adult resentments could not easily cross. As we prepared to leave, I pulled Jessica aside. "My offer to help with the children's education still stands. It's not about you or Mom and Dad. It's about them." She studied my face for a long moment. "Why would you do that when you clearly hate us?" "I don't hate you, Jessica. I'm disappointed in choices that were made and hurt by how I was treated. But those kids are innocent and they deserve whatever support I can provide." Something shifted in her expression. A brief glimpse of the sister I had once known before favoritism and entitlement had warped our relationship beyond recognition. "I'll think about it," she said finally. 2 weeks later, my lawyer received signed documents from my parents, and Jessica accepting the creation of educational trusts for the 4 children. The agreement included strict terms about fund usage, ensuring the money could only be accessed for legitimate educational expenses. Additionally, I arranged for the family to receive 6 months of financial counseling with a respected advisor who specialized in families facing foreclosure. Whether they would fully engage with the process remained to be seen, but I had provided tools that could help if they chose to use them. In the months that followed, I maintained limited contact with my nieces and nephews through occasional park visits and birthday gifts. Jessica gradually shifted from outright hostility to a guarded civility, particularly after the financial counselor helped her secure stable employment with hours compatible with Noah's daycare schedule. My parents remained distant, their pride wounded by my refusal to simply hand over money without accountability. The foreclosure eventually proceeded, forcing them to downsize to a rental property better suited to their current financial reality. While they never acknowledged their role in creating the situation, the financial counseling did help them establish a more sustainable budget going forward. Through these complicated interactions, I maintained firm boundaries while extending compassion where it could be received. The children came to know me as the aunt who remembered their birthdays and asked about their interests, creating a foundation for relationships that might grow more meaningful as they got older. The journey from homeless student to successful business owner who could help support 4 children's educations represented a triumph I could never have imagined during those dark days sleeping in my car. The fact that this support came with boundaries and accountability, rather than enabling dysfunctional patterns, reflected not vengeance, but wisdom, hard-won through painful experience. In my home office, I placed a photograph of my grandmother beside my design awards and the sapphire pendant she had entrusted to me. These symbols of my past, present, and future reminded me daily that family can be both our greatest wound and our greatest strength, depending on how we choose to define and create it. True family. I had learned supports growth rather than exploitation, celebrates success instead of resenting it, and recognizes that love without respect is merely control dressed in sentimental clothing. By establishing these truths in my own life, I had created space for authentic connections, free from the manipulation and favoritism that had defined my childhood. In helping my nieces and nephews while maintaining healthy boundaries with their parents, I demonstrated that standing firm is sometimes the most compassionate choice breaking cycles that would otherwise continue for generations. In the end, I found peace not in revenge or resentment, but in building a life that honored both my roots and my wings, shaped by, but not defined by the family that had once cast me aside. Have you ever had to make the difficult choice between helping family and protecting yourself? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear that standing firm on boundaries can be an act of love rather than selfishness. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember that sometimes the family we build matters more than the family we're born into.